Okay, so weird things are happening in the CPU space. Last week we talked about Intel 13th and 14th generation core processors, which seem to be having malfunctions and failures. I've got one of them. It's okay at the moment, but that's with a specific BIOS that limits its capabilities. And this week, we're going to talk about Intel because there has actually been an update from Intel. But we also had this weird thing happening where AMD has delayed its Ryzen 9000 launch by a couple of weeks due to what Tom's Hardware refers to as a quote-unquote unspecified quality issue. Yeah, it's kind of bizarre. If you're going to make this sort of statement, and you don't tell people what the details are, then people are just going to wonder what the details are. And it might potentially put them off. Even if AMD fixes this, what have they fixed? So the way things are going to happen now is that the Ryzen 7 9700X and 9600X processors are going to launch on August the 8th, while the higher end 9950X and 9900X, those are coming out on August the 15th. Alex, any thoughts about this? It's just a bit, I don't really know what to make of this.
Yeah.
Because all that's happened now is people are speculating on what the problem is.
Well, I would speculate on what the problem is. I would imagine wasn't hitting benchmark targets for some reason, maybe with motherboard interfacing issues is another thing I would imagine. I don't think a hardware defect in the sense of like what we're seeing on the Intel side, because the delay is so short. I don't think you get rid of that.
Yeah. I think actually thinking about it, you're quite right. There have been some engineering sample reviews coming out which are showing some disappointing results, but they are engineering or even quality samples which are pretty much near final. So maybe that has given AMD pause. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a couple of weeks, it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. But yes, it is kind of weird.
Yeah,
sure.
They've already been doing manufacturing for a while, and everything's gearing up. This couple of weeks they couldn't just get out a whole new batch by then and dump the rest. I don't think so, at least. But for me, it also just makes me a little bit worried about the launch, that it's not a completely done product. Not to fearmonger or anything like that, but both these Intel and AMD have had issues at launch. There was the whole burning the motherboard thing on was it early AM5 or was it AM4? Yep. I forget.
It was AM5.
Yeah, sorry. That was scary times. There's the slightly related but not the exact same thing, the RTX 4090 pin connection issue. We can never forget all these things. There's a number. And just with the way things are going on Intel side, I think they're spooked. AMD's spooked. They don't want to mess it up. They have such a good run going now, beating Intel. So might as well just be precautionary. For the reviewers, though, I'm a little worried this means multiple BIOS updates before launch, messing up the review process.
Potentially, we just don't know.
We don't know.
Maybe the BIOS is fine and it's just specific samples. I mean, it's interesting that they're pulling all products from the retail channel. So obviously, when you've got a big launch like this, the product goes out to the to the retailers, significantly ahead of time, so they can actually, fulfill their day one orders. Mm-hmm. So those have been pulled, and then they're going to be put back in once these, quality tests are done. I assume,
dude. Man, this is the thing about new CPU launches. It's always the motherboard stuff. I freaking hate dealing with motherboards. I don't know about you guys, but they come in and when it's a brand new CPU, you don't know the pitfalls yet. All the BIOS or the UEFI stuff, the software is super new, and you put it in and it's like, is this problem because of is this a motherboard problem? Is the CPU you don't know? It's like that it's like feeling around in the dark early on with these new CPUs. That is extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And doubly so if you're benchmarking this stuff pre-release, because then there's not even a place to commiserate with fellow purchasers on Reddit about how, oh man, my Asus boards aren't working. What's going on?
Right. It's awful.
Yes.
That's the worst part of any CPU launch right there.
The flurry of BIOSes. Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from.
Especially when they release a new update and then the new BIOS is worse than the one before it because they were trying to fix something else and they broke other things, and you're just everybody's like, all right, if you use this exact BIOS, this is the one you want. And it's no fun.
So meanwhile, there's obviously been things happening in the Intel space because after level 1 text expose, then basically, we had a lot of attention drawn to what's happening with 13th and 14th gen core. I think everybody was basically calling on Intel to make some kind of statement. And Intel did indeed make a statement. And initially they were talking about microcode issues. It's that BIOS again. BIOS microcode issues, which were elevating voltages and degrading processors. But then it transpired that there were oxidation issues, which may have affected a certain run of processors, but apparently not having that much of an impact. Steve at Gamers Nexus, did a great sort of takedown of this, which is to say that this statement doesn't really tell you anything. There's going to be a BIOS update coming, another BIOS update coming in mid-August. And it's like, well, okay, that's mid-August. Is there anything we can do now to mitigate the issue? No. No word from Intel. There's word from Intel about how they're going to make things right with consumers, but how?
I know how, Rich. Ship everybody a can of the amazing Deoxit Gold.
Yeah, that'll
squirted it. I use that for all my game cartridges when they get dirty. It's like, just take your CPU off, squirt a little of that bad boy in there, and it's all good.
Yeah, just immerse the motherboard in it. I think that's good for them. Here, not I really think there needs to be like a full product recall based upon batch numbers and or what your experience is. You could maybe fill out a form to see subjective, or just even like if you needed to degrade. I actually still don't think it was right that you had to require some sort of BIOS update to get performance back, which then throttles performance down. The processor was sold on a certain level of performance through reviews, through Intel's own slides on the issue. And that wasn't what you're ending up getting, especially years later after the fact. So I think there needs to be some sort of recall replacement program for the affected issue, because I don't feel a microcode update, which potentially is just that would only, doesn't it sound like it only would prevent the issue in newer processors, not ones that have already degraded? That's what kind of the implication is. So
that is, I don't see how it could magically solve degradation problems.
Right.
It's gonna, stop it happening to other processors. But if you've got a processor like I have, which, it looks to me like whatever this sticking plaster BIOS that fixed the issue is what I was doing anyway, which was to get a stable system limiting wattage to like 150 watts, which is nuts for 13900K. So yeah, I mean, I'd really like to have a proper working processor, please, Intel. Are they going to do that? We just don't know at the moment. I think it's going to reach the point where they're going to have to. And, is it a batch thing? There seems to be reports about maybe half of the processors, possibly a quarter to a half of the processors are affected. That is a lot of high-end silicon. We've got to remember it's like it's the i7s, the i9s, the most expensive chips that are actually being affected here.
I know.
That's the problem, right? It's going to be expensive, but ultimately they've got to make things right for their consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just a bit, I think what happened was they felt a need to have some kind of comment out there. They couldn't not say anything. But when you put out a comment which is, oh yes, elevated voltages, it's almost like a well, duh type thing, because, elevated voltages are obviously going to degrade with silicon. So couldn't you have said that like 6 months ago when these issues were being noticed? Doesn't feel great. Needs to be a positive response here. Fingers crossed Intel will get their stuff together.